I still remember the morning like it was yesterday. The sun was just peeking over the rooftops, soft golden light spilling into my kitchen. I had the kettle on, the familiar smell of tea leaves mingling with the faint aroma of buttered toast. My son, Daniel, was visiting. He'd come in with that overly casual grin that I sometimes found hard to read. "Mom," he said as he sat down at the small table by the window, "I've been thinking. You really don't need all those savings at your age." I froze mid-stir, spoon in hand. The sunlight caught the dust motes dancing in the air, making them shimmer like tiny stars. "I beg your pardon?" I asked carefully. "You've done enough, Mum," he continued, leaning back in his chair. "You've raised me, looked after Dad, handled everything. You don't need all that money. It's better if we use it for something useful, for us, for the family." I looked at him. Really looked. Daniel, my little boy who used to hide his allowance coins in his pockets, who once gave me his first $5 note because he thought I needed it more, was sitting in front of me, talking like I was a stranger. Like I was some old woman with a pile of cash and nothing else. I put the spoon down. It rattled against the porcelain bowl, loud in the quiet kitchen. "Daniel," I said slowly, my voice calm but firm, "this isn't your decision to make. These savings are mine. I've worked my whole life to have them. They are for me, for my security, and for my peace of mind." He waved his hand dismissively, the smile still fixed in place. "Oh, come on, Mum. You'll be fine. You're healthy, independent. What's the point of hoarding all that money? Live a little. Let us handle things for a change." The words cut deeper than I expected. Not because he wanted the money, but because he didn't see me. He didn't see the decades of work, the sleepless nights when Dad was sick, the tiny sacrifices I'd made every day to ensure we had food on the table, school books in the backpack, a roof over our heads. To him, all that was invisible. Only the money remained. I stayed silent, watching him sip his tea. The clink of the spoon against the cup, the soft creak of the chair, even the ticking of the old wall clock seemed to grow louder, highlighting the emptiness between us. I felt my chest tighten. Not with anger, not yet. But with hurt. Deep, quiet hurt. The kind that sits heavy in your heart when someone you love forgets to see you as a person, when love starts feeling transactional. Later that evening, I found myself alone in the lounge room. The old record player, a gift from my mother decades ago, softly spun a vinyl of classical piano pieces. The notes drifted around the room like whispers of the past. I sat in my favorite armchair, the fabric worn from years of use, and thought about Daniel. Had I really raised a stranger? The next morning, I woke early and went for a walk along the beach. The wind was crisp, carrying the tang of salt and seaweed. I watched the waves crash softly against the shore, rhythmical, steady, indifferent. I imagined my savings like those waves, something steady I'd built, something that belonged to me and no one else. When I returned, Daniel was waiting outside the house, pacing impatiently. He looked annoyed, frustrated that I hadn't immediately agreed with his plan. "Mom, I really don't get it," he said, voice rising slightly. "Why are you so stubborn? We just want to help you enjoy life. You're holding on to all that money for what?" "For me," I said softly, almost to myself. "For me. Not for anyone else. Not for you." He shook his head, muttering under his breath. I didn't hear exactly what he said, but I felt it, the dismissive, entitled energy that had crept between us over the years. I poured myself a cup of tea and went inside. That night, I sat by the window in the dark, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the soft cry of a lone kookaburra. I cried quietly, not because of the money, not because of the house or the savings, but because I realized something painful: love had changed. Somewhere along the way, my son's love had become mixed with expectation, with calculation, with entitlement. I remembered all the mornings I had woken up before dawn to make breakfast, all the nights I had stayed awake, listening to storms or the cough of a sick child. I remembered the hugs, the laughter, the quiet "I love you, Mum" whispers over the years. And I wondered, had all that been forgotten? Have you ever felt like love disappears when money gets involved? Tell me in the comments, what would you do if your own child treated you this way? If this story touches your heart, like and subscribe for more real-life stories on Elsie's True Stories. The days after Daniel's visit were heavy with silence. The house felt smaller somehow, though nothing had changed. The kettle still whistled in the mornings, the sun still streamed through the curtains, but the warmth felt different, tinged with loneliness, tinged with betrayal. I spent that week in quiet reflection. I went through the letters I had kept from Daniel's childhood, tiny notes he'd scribbled for me, crayon drawings that had survived decades, birthday cards written in uneven handwriting. Each one reminded me of who he used to be. And now, that boy seemed gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. One evening, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the rain fall softly over the garden. The scent of wet earth and jasmine filled the air. I thought about my options. I could give in, hand over some of my savings, and pretend nothing had changed. Or I could stand firm, protect what I had worked for, and reclaim my peace of mind. I felt a quiet fire grow inside me. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, self-respect, and the right to live on my terms. The next morning, I called the bank. The familiar smell of polished wood and leather-bound files welcomed me as I walked in. I asked to speak with my financial advisor. "I want to make sure my savings are secure," I said firmly. "I want them to be for me, and I want to decide who benefits after I'm gone." We talked for a long while. I set up a trust, ensuring that the bulk of my savings would go to causes and people who truly valued me, not just the money. My nephew James, who had always been thoughtful and kind, would receive a small portion. The rest would support local charities I cared about, animal shelters, community groups, and the women's center down the road. Walking out of the bank, I felt lighter than I had in months. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming control over my life, about choosing where my love, my money, and my care truly mattered. That afternoon, Daniel came by. He looked uneasy, as if he could sense the change in me. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked, voice tight. I nodded, gesturing for him to sit. "Go ahead." You really don't need the money?" he asked, incredulously. "No," I said, my voice calm. "I need respect, I need honesty, and I need to feel safe in my own home. That doesn't come with handing over my life savings." He looked down at his hands. I didn't think. I sighed softly. "I know you didn't. But I cried that night, not because of the money, but because I realized I'd raised strangers. People who thought love could be bought." He swallowed hard. "Mom. I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "I know," I interrupted gently. "But sorry isn't enough. You need to understand that love and care are not commodities. You cannot expect to take what isn't freely given. I didn't lose my family, I just stopped paying for their love." There was a long pause. Outside, the gum trees swayed in the afternoon breeze, the leaves rustling softly. I could hear a magpie calling from the garden, its song sharp yet sweet. Daniel finally looked up, eyes brimming with something between guilt and understanding. He nodded slowly. I understand. It wasn't perfect. He wasn't magically transformed. But it was a start. And for me, that was enough. In the following weeks, I focused on the relationships that mattered: James, my old friends, Doris the neighbor, even the ladies at the women's center. I invited them for tea, for walks along the beach, 4 quiet afternoons of knitting and storytelling. The days became brighter. Each laugh, each shared moment reminded me that life's true wealth wasn't in banknotes or accounts. It was in human connection, in being seen and valued for who you are. I also made a conscious decision to enjoy small pleasures. The smell of baking bread, the feel of the morning sun on my face, the sound of rain tapping against the window. I started journaling again, recording memories, thoughts, and lessons I wanted to pass on. Each page, each word, felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. One rainy afternoon, Daniel called unexpectedly. I answered, and for the first time, our conversation felt real. He asked about the trust I'd set up, about the charities, about James. I listened, nodded, answered with patience. There was no resentment in me, only understanding, and the gentle knowledge that boundaries could teach more than anger ever could. I remember standing by the window later that day, watching raindrops slide down the glass. I whispered to myself, sometimes standing firm is the kindest act you can do, for yourself and for those you love. If this moment hit close to home, give this video a like. It helps more people hear stories like this. A few months later, life had taken on a gentler rhythm. The mornings were filled with soft sunlight streaming through the curtains, the smell of toast and brewed tea curling through the kitchen, and the distant call of magpies in the gum trees. The house felt lighter, warmer, as if it, too, had been relieved of tension. I had spent time nurturing the relationships that truly mattered, my nephew James, old friends I hadn't seen in years, and Doris, my next-door neighbor, who always seemed to know when I needed a smile or a loaf of fresh bread. One quiet afternoon, as I sat in my armchair reading a well-worn novel, I heard footsteps on the porch. Looking up, I saw little Sophie, my youngest granddaughter, clutching a small basket of wildflowers she had picked from the garden. "Granny Elsie," she called, running toward me. I smiled, motioning for her to come closer. "Hello, my darling. What have you got there?" She held the basket out proudly. "For you." I took the flowers, inhaling their delicate fragrance. The simplicity of the gesture, the sincerity in her eyes, reminded me of what truly mattered. Healing doesn't always come with grand gestures. Sometimes, it comes in small, tender moments like this, in the love freely given without expectation. Later that day, Daniel came by. He was hesitant, unsure if he was welcome. Mark stayed in the car, giving him space. I invited him in with a quiet smile and offered him a cup of tea. I just wanted to say thank you, he began, voice soft. I've been thinking about what you said, about love, about respect. I was wrong. I nodded gently. I know you didn't understand before. It's a hard lesson, but I'm glad you're here now. He looked around the room, taking in the warmth of the sunlight, the scent of the garden, the faint ticking of the wall clock. Can we start again? I smiled. We can try. But this time, let's do it with honesty. Let's care for each other because we want to, not because of money. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. But it was a start. And that, I realized, was enough. The weeks turned into months, and my life was filled with ordinary joys. The laughter of grandchildren, the soft hum of the washing machine, the quiet satisfaction of tending to the garden, the aroma of freshly baked bread from Doris. I began volunteering at the local women's center, sharing stories, tea, and wisdom from years of experience. One evening, as I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sunset over the bay, I reflected on everything that had happened. The tension with Daniel, the feelings of betrayal, the moments of quiet despair, they were all part of a journey. And through it all, I had discovered something invaluable. The wealth of love, respect, and dignity is far more precious than money. I whispered softly to myself. Love without respect is just a transaction. I finally learned, money can't buy love, but it can buy freedom. Sometimes, walking away is how you teach love its real worth. I poured myself another cup of tea and watched the sky change from gold to soft pink, then to deep indigo. The world was calm, the air sweet with the scent of the evening garden, and I felt a deep sense of peace. Life had taught me a lesson about resilience, compassion, and self-worth, and I was ready for whatever came next. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe and turn on the bell. I post new ones every day on Elsie's True Stories.